everybody. Welcome to A Glass of OJ. So, this is the first time that I think we're going to do this live, and not hopefully the last time. So, getting back into the stream of things, kind of was figuring out how to do some of the live streamy bits, trying to get the right key in the right stream software to make sure I could get on here. So, sorry it took me a little extra. Also, was trying to figure out how why the music wasn't coming on. Well, I have really good noise filtering on OBS over here, so I had to kind of turn that off for a moment. So still working out the intro sequence there. But how's everybody doing? Hope everyone's doing well. I've got you over on chat. If you want to chat with me, that's totally fine. This does get recorded and we'll just get published like normal. It's just me doing a thing like as if I was doing a glass of OJ. Only I've maybe got a little bit of conversation on the side. So, but regardless of whether there's any chats on the side, got a little bit of a show to you for you today. Don't know how long this will last, but kind of as the title says, North Korea and Glasswing AI, they're coming for our jobs. That's all tongue in cheek, of course, but in kind of interesting ways for different reasons. I'm going to deal with this in reverse order. This week has been a very interesting week in news, and so that may kind of shape a little bit about how I run this from here on out. But there was a few great news articles to go over some interesting things that went on, not only with Glasswing. That seems to be the big news this week in cybersecurity. So, dealing with AI, dealing with AI that is literally printing zero days, as some people are trying to make it out to be. And in a certain way, they're absolutely right. There are definitely some models coming out now that are capable of not just finding potential issues that are very critical in software that right now is completely patched, but can also write the exploit for them. For instance, Anthropic, who writes Claude, which is their artificial intelligence, they have released a version of Claude called Mythos. And so Mythos is a bit different than one of the previous versions of this kind of project they've run, where they actually did find what would amount to zero days in code, or at least some buffer overflows or issues in code that would be considered critical issues. But the problem ended up being is that from the context the code runs in, it was not possible to get the actual vulnerability in the code to run. And that really just depends on the system you're running on, the environments, and what the application is actually bringing in from the input side and how it's processing that. So, and also simply how the operating system even works with memory, right? You know, the code may handle memory one way, but there's also often a lot of protections at the operating system level to deal with the fact, for instance, C does not inherently have um, memory security built into C. You have to work within C to make sure your memory practices are secure. This is why some people say you should do Rust instead, because with Rust you'd be able to have a lot of these memory security functionalities already inherent into it. But regardless, they've now got Mythos to where it can actually not just find an issue in code, but actually then go about exploiting it in its own context successfully. And so this is what some people are calling, a zero-day printer, a zero-day printing machine. And it scares people because, oh my, here is this thing that can find I think the buzz was I think there was like 20 or 26-year-old issue in the code, meaning that when the code was written 26 years ago, it's not really been significantly modified the commit of when that code that is vulnerable was put into the code base was 26 years ago, and no one's caught it prior to this, and that's scary for a lot of people, right? Um, so that's kind of the start of that, and then Anthropic then went on to build kind of a big press release talking about Project Glasswing, where Microsoft and Apple and CrowdStrike and I could probably go down, but you can go to Project Glasswing's website. They have a list of very high profile, very ecosystem wide, AWS, Google, all of them are involved in Project Glasswing. Um, and the reason why they're partnering is because, well, Anthropic's not just going to let anybody have Mythos. Um, their press release read kind of hypey and edge lordy in a way, but essentially they're trying to say our tool we've built is so dangerous we cannot release it to the public. um, that they didn't say that necessarily, but in those words, but they were highlighting the dangers that their tool poses if they were to just let this out. This thing can just literally find issues that are immediately exploitable. This thing will write the exploit for them and will just let you into systems that it finds issues in. You know, that's powerful. Um, Also, I do take note that the Department of Defense, yes, the Department of Defense, by the way, the Department of Defense decided to essentially ban the use of Anthropic, and the United States government, even wider than that, has essentially rooted out and said you cannot use Anthropic in anything. And so a lot of companies that have been using Anthropic as a part of their AI tooling that they've got under the hood in the products, they've been ripping those out potentially. This is a little, could be a little similar to when, some folks actually started saying, I think it was the Treasury perhaps, said, we can no longer use, was it Kaspersky? Yeah, it was Kaspersky. You might remember that from several years ago now. And there were all kinds of companies that were looking to rip Kaspersky out of their AV engines. I remember Checkpoint, for instance, used Kaspersky as one of the many engines that it would run under the hood in its AV scanning capabilities in the IPS, the web content filter, and file downloads, and Sandblast, all the things that they had. A lot of other places use that too. It wasn't just Checkpoint. And so they had to rip that out because, they couldn't just go install Kaspersky in places, and they had to release Kaspersky removed images for those customers that did heavy business with the federal government to ensure that they would be compliant with that order. Anthropic's a little different because I would say a lot of the companies out there have not been making it entirely clear that they've got AI running under the hood on things. There's many levels and layers to AI, as with all things computing and application and developer. Um, and it's not always easy to determine when you're running in an AI context or not. And I think it would probably be truly impossible to be able to reveal that as a part of the user experience. It would be extremely hard to do so, or at least it would start making user experiences very unusable. One thing that's led to a little bit of the unusability of the internet today has been not GDPR itself, but rather everyone's interpretation of complying with GDPR, in that now they've got cookie pop-ups every single time you join websites that say, hey, we're going to gather all this information about you unless you click over here to change your settings of what we're allowed to do. And otherwise, if you continue to use the website, then you're consenting to us taking all this data from you and potentially selling it. Um, and so you're constantly now faced with essentially agreements that you've got that are you have to sign legal agreements essentially to browse the internet today constantly. Imagine having to do that with AI, and actually GDPR may make that more reality than we think, or laws like GDPR, privacy laws, where if you are processing people's data through an AI, they may need to know about it. Those laws are probably being written now, um, from a privacy perspective. And so I would imagine we're going to see even more um, kind of slop on the internet where it's just user experience constantly being hampered and harmed by all of these legal agreements that you essentially have to sign in order to just use the internet, and not at the point of your ISP. But anyway, getting back to Glasswing, um, they say they're not releasing this to the public, and because it's too dangerous. But apparently, it's not too dangerous to hype up and talk about publicly. Because another thing is just knowing this is possible and is possible with Claude. They've just they've built this with Claude, and so knowing that Claude can be used to do this um, means someone else is going to figure this out too. So these tools are definitely going to pop up more and more. The attackers are going to come out with their own tools that will do the exact same thing if they have not already been doing and accomplishing those things themselves already. And just they're zero days. They're not telling anybody that they've got 500 zero days in Oracle yet. They're gonna wait to use those. Zero days are still tickets and opportunities that you don't want to just squander on anything. But also, you wouldn't know. It's a zero day. And we'll get back to kind of how to defend against zero day attacks, because it's the same as any other attack, even if you can detect it or prevent it first, which is its layers. Um, but it's not being released to the public. But what it is being done is all of these partnering organizations, so Microsoft, AWS, Apple, Google, um, they all get a taste, so they can contribute their software essentially, or maybe they get a copy of this model, or they get to participate in having this model evaluate their code. A lot of big open source projects have been included, so the Linux Foundation's been included. I'm sure several others. It looks like they ran this against OpenBSD at one point. So again, they're trying to do more than just serve the corporate overlords. They're also trying to look in areas that developers need a lot of help anyway. Um, it should be noted though, that there's been a lot of AI slop in the developer space. So bug bounties were a good thing for a while, and now they're probably going to undergo a season of dislike. Reason being is that with a bug bounty system, essentially you're advertising to an ecosystem, hey, we welcome anybody to attack our systems, to find issues with our systems, to coordinate with us on reporting that, and we'll go fix that. And you might be able to also go and publicly talk about this, and do some bragging or whatever. But you also would get paid. It's a bug bounty, right? The bug bounty programs have had issues with what are called beg bounties, where they find something that is so inconsequential, or find something that is that is not really an issue. So clickjacking, for instance, is a classic beg bounty ask, where they go, "Oh, hey, I can put your website in an iframe and act like you and get people to click on things and pretend I'm you and get them to do things," which that isn't really a vulnerability. That is just you can pretend to be me and convince people to click on things that look like my links. Like that's just social engineering. Like you can fool other people on your infrastructure. They're on your infrastructure. Anything goes, right? You don't even need clickjacking. You can just six set on it and copy the website and just look as if not more legitimate. So And in fact, that's probably an easier way to do it rather than just loading a website into a huge iframe. But regardless, those types of non-issues, or that's just one example. There's a lot of other non-issues. Those types of non-issues get hyped up a lot in these bug bounty programs, and people have to spend time on false positives. People have to spend time with useless reports. And that's kind of the pain you want to adopt because you want to find something that's actually very actionable, very impactful. You actually want to find that with a bug bounty. You want someone to get something that's very difficult. And many companies actually put true bounties on the types of issues they're looking for. I forget what Microsoft's classic, or maybe it wasn't Microsoft. I think it was Facebook. Facebook's classic. I think it was $1 million they were offering. Maybe it was a 500,000, but it was very big bucks, especially about 6 or 7 years ago. They were offering big bucks for anybody who can bypass their authentication. If you can gain access to somebody's account, uh, and I can't remember if they excluded pure social engineering attacks. Like, truly, you just target someone's account, you didn't need to log in, and you were able to just log in. You were able to just access their stuff. If you're able to find that, they have $1 million reward for you. I don't remember if anybody's ever claimed that. I know some people have claimed um, I think, $100,000 bug bounties from Facebook before, but I don't think I've ever seen anybody claim that one. It's a huge one, and that's kind of their sign, if you will, of we think we have this so well that we would offer $1 million to anybody to break that bit of security. But I would say with the advent here of AI that is very pedestrian at this point. It's very easy to load these AIs up, point them at some place, and say, just go find stuff. And they'll find stuff, but we're seeing a lot of AI slop enter its way into free and open source projects, and so they'll go and raise issues there. Um, there are definitely commits that have been raised to fix issues in code based on AI's output, and those commits have been very fraught with issues and had problems themselves, and were maybe even worse than the situation they were trying to fix. Um, so a lot of developer ecosystems in the free and open source world have had to deal with uh, maybe not sometimes bad faith, but maybe well intentioned, but problematic development. Um, and I'm going to talk a bit about abstraction with artificial intelligence here a bit. But the thing I do want to say is that though this is not being released to the public, other people will develop this. At some point, this will be released to the public. This is going to be released to the public. It has to be released to the public. Anthropic would not be making all of this fuss and noise if they do not intend to monetize this in some way going forward. The, what they actually release to the public may be wildly different than what they've built here, um, and may not be as feature rich. We don't know. But to me, the big takeaway of Glasswing is that if you are not using AI in some way to find code issues, misconfigurations, environment issues, vulnerabilities, weaknesses, attack surface issues, whatever you want to call it, if you are not using AI, or if you are shying away from using AI against your own platforms, you are going to get left behind. And attackers will use AI. They are going to use AI against you. So, much like a lot of the other types of technologies that have existed that have gotten into attackers' hands, you need to put them in your hands. You need to have the same tools the attackers are running, right? Cobalt Strike we constantly call that malware, but actually it's not. It's a professional tool set that's used by pen testers. Um, but we know that Cobalt Strike is pirated and is used by attackers to beacon out and do command and control across the endpoints and devices out there. Again, if you are not using attackers' tools against yourself, including now and probably for the past couple of years, if you're not looking to use AI, other people are. And the barrier to entry to get access into your environment is getting lower and lower and lower. Most successful attacks have been through social engineering, have been through scamming you in your email or on social media or on like a click fix pop up on a website or a Google sponsored ad that you clicked on. It is going to be turning into probably one of the other ways that people are getting in to your environment. It's going to start competing with that as a primary vector. Um, so, one thing that kind of comes to mind is with the amount of end of life operating systems and software and applications that are still out there on the internet. Um, they're not getting updates. They're not getting code review anymore. So if you still have Windows 2008 running on your public footprint, the time is coming where these AIs will write a lot of zero days for Windows 2008, and Microsoft won't know it or tell you. Maybe Microsoft will kick off AI against 2008 just to find out what's going on. But the time is coming up where these attackers are going to be doing that and finding interesting ways in that are not going to just get detected. Your WAF isn't going to see it, your IPS isn't going to see it because they don't have the signatures for it. They're not going to know that this is the zero day for, whatever the case may be, whatever service you have, IIS, remote code execution or something, right? So again, if you're not using AI against your own systems, someone else is or will be doing so soon, and will be doing it at scale. And it's one of those interesting things where when we talk about warfare, really warfare is all about logistics. And one of the key things about logistics is time, money, resources, infrastructure. But time is important, right? As a business, we do not actually have all the time to watch every single packet and examine it by hand, right? We have firewalls that do that for us. We do not have time to watch every single user login and validate it. We have systems to do that, right? So we know we have a limited amount of time. We also have a limited amount of people. We also have a limited amount of money that we can, as businesses or organizations, dedicate to reviewing or looking at security issues, hardening. All these tasks need to be carried out by people, even if they're largely using technology to do it. It needs to be carried out. Those logistics are real. The attackers also have logistics. Um, they may have some more free time, but if they're running their operation like a cyber criminal business, well, it's a cybercrime business. They're there to go out and go and try and find as many vulnerable targets to exploit as possible with as little money as possible, with as little effort as possible, so that they can get that money or get more access so they can sell the access and get money. That's what they're doing. So there is a certain amount of time they're willing to invest on getting in, maintaining access. The more resources you have and the more value you place on the target. So if you're a nation state, you've not got necessarily an unlimited amount of resources, but you've certainly got more mandate and support to dedicate resources to a single target. Cyber criminals, not always, not so much. And we'll actually talk about a particular a particular operation that a nation state took on and spent a lot of money on, spent a lot of time on here in a bit. But anytime we can meaningfully abstract the technology and the problems away to get in and to find weaknesses and to exploit those, anytime we can do that, uh, we start entering kind of these new worlds and new arms races. Um, and so, in this case, it's going to take even less effort for attackers to get in our environment, especially undetected, at least to start. And so it's becoming easier to do that. That also means it should be easier for us to use the same tools to find the issues and go fix them. The problem is we do not have the exact same strength in our ability to fix our tech debt and our backlog of issues. There is still a limitation there. Um, AI can just go and ram through your entire system trying to find something, and they're not going to care too much if AI ended up taking your system down for, 6 hours, or bricked your systems, and it took a week to recover. They're not going to care. You are going to care, so you're going to actually be cautious with AI, which they may not be. They're just going to spray and pray, and so the internet's going to get very noisy, right? When vuln scanners came out, Nmap, or OpenVAS, and even Nessus and Nexpose as free versions. All these tools kind of came out. There were a lot of great things that people could do, consulting wise, or even just as practitioners in an organization. You could evaluate your own footprint, you could evaluate your network, but it meant that attackers could too. And so the internet became even more noisy. Everybody, if you've ever plugged into the internet and you've ever taken a look at all the IP addresses that are hitting you, and you've ever mapped them back to some place, you're going to see a lot of things related to port scanning and Qualys and Nmap and security scorecard and all those extortion groups out there to selling that scam to people. You're going to find all kinds of things just coming at you. And the internet is a very noisy place, very noisy. And in fact, I challenge anybody to plug into a RDP system on the internet and not get popped within 5 minutes. Especially if your password is something like, winter 2025 bang or something. I dare you to do that, because every time I've ever done it in lab, it is immediately popped. Within 5 to 10 minutes of being on the internet, it is found, it is popped, and somebody is in that Windows system doing stuff. It is quite extraordinary, or maybe it's actually ordinary. It's just if you're not familiar with it, it will open your eyes to the issue. In exposure, you're constantly being probed for exposure. So, that kind of brings me into the future of AI and cybersecurity. Everyone's talking about AI is going to take our jobs. We're not going to have jobs anymore. OJ, everyone's going to take our jobs, and we're not going to be able to do cybersecurity work anymore because AI is going to do it all. And I think there's some mixed news here for sure. Anytime technology comes out, there is always displacement. I might give an example that kind of really goes back before the Stone Age, and the cultivation of agriculture. Um, we were planting plants before we had the stone tools carved to actually dig in the earth and plow the earth and cultivate the earth. We were using our hands to, dig at the ground. Maybe we were using sticks to dig at the ground, but we had a lot of people doing that to plant things. At some point, we found the way to maybe use stones or some basic machines, maybe to make the life a little easier. At some point, we started discovering, bronze. We figured out how to harness beast labor and use them. Once you start getting it to where a horse or an ox or something is now dragging your plow behind you, um, or other tools and technologies to cultivate the earth, you don't need as many people doing that. Or you can use the same amount of people to create a large field, right? And so that's where agriculture really takes off, is the ability to do things at a larger scale with fewer people. But now what you need leather workers to create the straps that harness your beast to your tool. You need someone to take care of that beast, because and maybe the person who's kind of driving the beast knows a little bit about that, but you need someone who's going to care for that, help to breed them so that they can reproduce more of its kind, and cultivate and take care of them while that person's out plowing. You're going to need a bronze or a steel or an iron worker who is able to, work the materials to build the tools. And on and on and on we could go, where you need someone else now to do things in order to support the work here. And they can also then support and do work elsewhere. That blacksmith is also going to be taking care of blacksmith jobs for other things, all because these technologies open up other opportunities, all the way up until you get tractors and machines, and now you don't need the beast to do anything, and now you just need a machine, and it can have huge tools on it, and it can plow a field in a day where it may take you multiple beasts to do a day. You can just do it with one tractor in a day and plow a whole large field. So you get my point that every time we've gone along the way, everybody along the chain here has been displaced. Everybody has had to have a change in their career, a change in the way they do the work. The way of doing things is no longer the same. We see a lot of musicians, right? Violinists, we still need violinists. There's still lots of orchestras out there, but there's a lot of other types of musicians out there. When sampling came about in the 80s, where we were kind of ripping off uh, uh, records from other people, and we were kind of sampling these, and we were beginning to get into synthesized music really well, and we could sample the music that was on these records, and we could sample them into a synthesizer, and we could essentially use them to make other kinds of music that was impossible to make before. Daft Punk did that specifically. I mean, they stole music from other people, and then transformed it into something that was not able to be made before. Go look at a lot of what Daft Punk did, and most of it is all. Harder, better, faster, stronger is literally like the opening bar, or the opening couple bars to like a soul or a funk song. It's and they play through a few different riffs of it, and that's kind of it. And then they've got other things over top of it. So this isn't unusual to us. We have always seen creative as well as knowledge worker. We have seen even physical labor displaced by technology constantly. So there is something coming. I just don't know what that looks like. I know a portion of it is going to be augmentation. People are going to be able to use AI to do their jobs better. They're going to be able to use AI to take care of and automate the tasks that they couldn't do. Automation is a skill in and of itself, right? And so if you really want to know how to, pull all this data in and everything, now you need to know Power BI. But not if I can just ask an AI to pull that data into Power BI so I can go study it. There's still going to be things that people need to be doing in order to do those things. Another abstraction that you may not think about in computing, well, cloud's a big abstractor, but I'm even going back to computers, just computers in general. The 80s, computers were now the size of something that can just fit on your desk. And it was still to the point where if you take the chassis case off and you look at there, you can actually go into the board and you can see all these chips, And truth is you could program your own chips. And it wasn't, I wouldn't say it still took skill, but you could go and program every single chip on there and know exactly what was there. Marcus Random actually used to give a talk where he talked about that, where he used to know how to program every single one of these chips to build his computer from Radio Shack. Um, well, now we're in a situation where only a handful of people in a room at Intel or AMD understand a single chip in your motherboard today. There's only a few people in the world who even know how that works, truly know how that works. We only need AMD, Qualcomm, Intel, and those people to understand how to make their chip, how to program it, how it needs to operate. We need that to be extensible, but how it operates, very few people know how that works, truly know how that works. And it's just amazing to me that just on the backs of a handful of people, the entire world turns on the knowledge base of those people. If those people went to a conference and something forbid that it ever happens, something happened at a conference, that is a knowledge base that would be very hard to replace. Now, you can have documentation and everything else, but what I'm saying is that we've outsourced our need to understand and know how all of that stuff works in order to have fantastic computers that evolve, year over year, a decade over decade at alarming paces, honestly. And think about even from a cybersecurity perspective, we have abstracted things all the time. Think about in the 90s when we were assessing people's security postures, when we were doing penetration tests. Penetration tests were manual. You had to program your own, web scanner. You had to program your own packet sniffer. You had to program your own protocol analyzer. You had to do that. You had to manually make all these things. They didn't exist at the time. And there were people who came and released open source, projects and things. We ended up getting Nmap out of it and OpenVAS and all these other tools. But at some point, we also found so many issues and vulnerabilities in software that it would be really impossible to manually test all of those things. Even if you just know, oh, they're running these 10 software stacks, so I can run these manually. It's impossible. You're not going to be able to do it. You don't, again, logistics, you don't have time to do it. It would be far too expensive to hire someone and say, run all this against me. So you have to automate. So we script it. Well, we can script it, and at some point we release a product called a vulnerability scanner. Well, at some point, even coming up with the vulnerability scan modules and checks in a timely manner becomes impossible. So instead of actually checking for the weakness and the vulnerability, all we do is fingerprint the version of software you're running. And we call that a vulnerability scanner. And not only that, but as compliance frameworks come out and say you need to have a vulnerability, you have to have a pen test. Well, pen tests used to be a little bit more than just doing a vuln scan. It's just that it was manual. Hey, I was able to gain access to your system through this weakness I know exists in this software. Okay. But I mean, that was a little more than a vuln scan. So pen test mills came out and started basically giving pen tests out and selling pen tests for like hotcakes for, $5,000 to $10,000 a pop and saying it was a pen test. So we already know that this level of mediocrity is not only tolerated in the industry, frankly, built the industry that we see today. Mediocrity built this industry, very much so, on the backs of people who were trying to get us to drive towards excellence. It's good enough was good enough. And as long as it checked the box, that's what determined who succeeded or not. And meanwhile, you have a handful of people who actually do things the right way, right? But pen tests become vuln scans. Meanwhile, you have other people who are doing real pen testing. Are they still vuln scanning you? Absolutely, they're still vuln scanning you. And that is saving them so much time to go and figure out what they need to go do manually, right? And so the exact same thing is going to happen with AI and is already happening with AI. There are platforms out there today in attack surface management and pen testing tools out there where they throw AI against it, and then they have humans go as well into those AI flagged opportunities to go and validate what is going on in the AI engine, go and manually pen test themselves, and give you findings that are kind of what you could call human in the loop findings, pen tester in the loop findings. So that is happening. We are going to see our methodologies that involve these tools become more abstracted away, and into the hands of people who don't necessarily even need to understand all the inner workings of how this AI does what it does. And that can be dangerous, and we'll talk about that in a second. But we're going to see in security operations centers, we're going to see AI doing all your triage for you. So AI will probably not replace all of tier one's functionality. I think tier ones will heavily use AI. Definitely, they will be using AI. I would argue that AI reduces the barrier to entry for tier one SOC analysts. There are so many people who have an extremely an extremely high barrier to entry for tier one analysis, and it's very silly to me. But they're like, oh, we need you to have like 5 to 8 years experience in IT in order to have this tier one analyst level job that we're going to pay you, uh, you know, 60% of what you were already getting. You know, we're going to pay you $56,000 for a tier one job when you're already getting paid 90,000 or over $100,000 for this job you've had for 5 to 8 years over here. So we're going to give you this massive pay cut in order for you to start out in infosec, and that's the strategy at a lot of companies that are hiring tier one. AI is going to drastically limit, or rather lower, the barrier to entry there, to where you can give people who have their security plus, sit them down, teach them how the AI works, and then just go and be tier one. That is coming. Um, Also, AI detection engineering is coming, right? So, right now, you can do some threat hunting, and you can go do a lot of intelligence research, and you can go and try to understand how this attack is working, then go across your security stack or technology stack, visibility stack, and write detections for those things. Um, that takes a lot of time right now. AI is going to also trim that time down. You're still going to need humans who ultimately know what outputs they're expecting and should know what to look for. And that's the key thing. And this is why I say it's going to be a lot of augmentation, especially to start augmentation. You're still going to need to have humans who understand enough about the environment, about the systems, about the security technologies to understand if this is okay, if this is good or not. And even if they don't understand what the AI is doing itself, they're going to be able to use those tools as consumers, right? Think of how many web developers are up in AWS and we're using AWS and are using Azure and GCP and are publishing web apps and have zero clue about networking, zero clue even about really how web works, zero clue about identity access management and key management and everything like that. They have no idea how any of that works. They just know how to code a website, and they know how to code a web app and put it in. That's all they know. And you know what? AWS will just let you work. They'll just let it go and just let you do it. AI is going to be that, but probably worse. Um, And, abstraction rewards the ignorant in that way. It just needs to work. And I don't mean ignorant in a derogatory way, but it just needs to work. Um, and that is the kind of anthem here, both for business and the attacker. Business looks at technology and says, I just need this to do the thing, I just need this to work. So there's a level of mediocrity that they're willing to accept so long as it cashes the check. So long as it does the thing I need it to do, I'm happy. That's my success criteria. Well, the attacker's success criteria, they don't care how sophisticated their attack is. Really, they don't. Did it get me in? And then was I able to get my work done? Great. And as long as it's easy to use, that'll be awesome. I'll have that. So remember, it just needs to work. And that's where, this is going to require us even more to harden our environments. And people will try to sell you zero trust, and people will try to sell you all the different frameworks and thoughts and ideas. It really comes down to the top controls that we've talked about for the past 30 years. And, chief among them is inventory. Inventory, inventory, inventory. It's the first step in almost any risk assessment. What are your systems? What's your data? Where does it sit? Who owns it? What are the assets you care about? Who owns them? Where do they sit? How are they controlled? All the questions you're going to have from that stem from, what is your inventory? What do you have that you care about or should care about? Where are your systems? What applications are they tied to? Where's your CMDB? What software is running on these systems? What version are they at? Again, everything stems from that inventory. And that hasn't changed. In the past 30 years, that has not changed and will continue to be the bedrock of any kind of security control that you want to be serious about. Is what is your inventory? Give us the register of assets that you care about. And those are the challenges to face. And they're not cheap challenges. That's the thing. And this is, again, the asymmetry of the logistics here. These are not cheap things to solve. Will AI come in and magically solve it for us? It's going to augment our ability across every avenue here. So maybe there is going to be a better way to inventory all the data and all the assets and give you a clear sight and view as to um, all of the assets that you need to protect, and automatically provision them and self heal and all that. But it just needs to work. So are we really going to spend money and time and effort on something that works? It works, so why should I stop at? So that's a bit of the cynicism there. But yeah, the future of AI, it's going to take our jobs. um, I don't think anytime soon. It's going to displace us. We're going to have to change what we do. We're going to need to adopt AI. We did that. We did ourselves a big disservice in the. I think the hacker community did this for a bit, and the InfoSec community definitely did this, and I see it with the AI advent as well. Stop using AI. Don't put things into AI. That's the only advice we can give people, is stop using AI. And that's the only advice we could give people going to the cloud, is don't do that. Don't go to the cloud. Cloud is someone else's computer. You can't trust it. You can't do this and this and this and this. You can't trust. And unfortunately, business went, well, it works. And so we're going to go. And it made money. So we're going to go. And so we'll see where the attacker's ability to disrupt your business to make it a worthwhile expense in putting more protections and controls in. We'll see, because that's the only thing that will ultimately end up moving the needle on this, I fear. So the other people coming for our jobs, North Korea. So for a while, you've seen news headlines where a North Korea IT worker, fake IT worker, gets hired and everything. So the way that's been working classically is North Korea places people in America and essentially pays them to operate a laptop farm. And then they go and get hired, or somebody pretending to be them or someone else gets hired, and may get hired at 10 or 20 different jobs. And you could even have many companies thinking that Janice um, Outen in New Jersey, in apartment B on Baker Street, I don't know, I'm just mentioning something there, um, that person works for Deloitte. But truthfully, there's also another Janice who works at Accenture and works at KPMG and works at PNC and works at or PwC and works at all these different places. Maybe 50 people work at that address. And what's happening is other people across the world are logging into that laptop farm and logging into those laptops and then doing work for some company and getting paid for it, right? And people are hiring North Korea all over the place. And I even saw a news article just today where someone actually went and knowingly hired North Korea and gave them a laptop to specifically study and figure out what are they doing, where are they coming from, fed them honey files, honey devices, honey tokens, honey things, gave them all the different things to figure out their infrastructure, where they were and who they were. So very, adversary engagement, very much so. And so it was a lot of interesting stuff. So you go check that out. But North Korea just did something that is a little bit beyond that. And this is the first time we are detecting this kind of operation, I think. Um, it has probably been done before. People are really remarking about this that, oh, they didn't have North Koreans doing this. Well, why would they have North Koreans doing this? They're not going to sneak North Koreans into America necessarily to do these things. They're going to pay people here to go do those things. They're going to pay mules to do it. But what North Korea did is North Korea paid some third party proxies, some groups, outfits here in the States or around the world to create personas that would pass background scrutiny, that had professional credentials. And then they went to a company called Drift Protocol. And this is like a cryptocurrency exchange. And what they did is they spent 6 months gaining the trust of these executives and of the people working at Drift, meeting them at conferences, going to dinner with them, having drinks with them, asking deep questions about the Drift protocol, the exchange. They were trying to act like they were interested in like a joint venture or partnership, and that they had this app or they had this integration they wanted to do, and that they're I think it was a trade quantification. Actually, I've got it right here. I can tell you exactly what they said they were trying to be. Um, but yeah, they were claiming to be real quick here. It was at the top of this other one. Quantitative trading firm. Yeah. So they presented themselves as a quantitative trading firm and they were looking to integrate their platform with Drift. And they even spent not $1 million. They gave Drift $1 million as a sense of goodwill and gave them $1 million as a part of a partnership and ended up creating a malicious repo for them to copy some code out. They were able to infect their machines. They also infected some of their phones and other things with a fake wallet app. And basically, was it on April 1st? Yeah, it was on April 1st. They basically took over that exchange and took out $285 million. $285 million. So they took that out of that through cryptocurrency, $285 worth of cryptocurrency. Um, Now, that's interesting. And it was interesting also people were saying that it wasn't North Korean nationals that were heavily involved in this. And these were more than just mules. These were professional people who were doing espionage. These are professional espionage outfits who are doing this. Um, And part of me says, this isn't really so amazing, because we know from, well, our own organization called the CIA, the Mossad, KGB, and other sorts of organizations. We know that getting assets in a country is always part of the game. You're always trying to get assets. But the thing is these people um, were not just coached on how to pass an interview. These folks knew the drift protocol's business model. They understood how these partnerships worked. They understood all of the tech and how to go and talk about the integration. They understood how to do all that. They impressed the drift protocol folks. They went to conferences together, you know, and their backgrounds and professional backgrounds and credentials all checked out. You do all the checks that you would expect to do. But this still happened, and some of the things that I was thinking about was, you know this is obviously a big target for North Korea specifically, because with North Korea, they're wanting money. Now, why do they want money? Can't they just print their own? Well, kind of. Their currency isn't really good in most places. Their currency is not. They need hard cash, hard currency from other things. Because of the amount of sanctions the global economy has put North Korea under, they have to have cold hard cash. So they have Bitcoin, which they're able to use to launder around the world, and they're able to get cold hard cash with that. And with that cold hard cash, they're able to buy materials, buy labor, and buy the goods that they need to build their nuclear missile program. Um, nuclear warheads and nuclear weapons have been around for a long time, uh, nearly a century now. They've been around for a while. The most expensive and hard to research thing is the delivery mechanism, from what I understand. And North Korea, of course, wants to have a very far reaching nuclear warhead or nuclear missile delivery capability to threaten all kinds of people, including the United States. And so they want that capability. And the only way they're going to do that is if they have money. And so they are going to spend as long as 6 months earning the trust of people who have mountains of money to be able to steal it from them and spend all this time and energy doing just that. So it's very, very interesting. I don't know what ended up happening to the people that they worked with. I don't know if North Korea shipped them out and were able to get them to friendly states or nations and basically make them disappear or what. But it was very interesting. But the thing I was thinking about with this was, when you're thinking about a lot of business ventures like this, where it's like key partnerships and integrations, a lot of those things are very sensitive. A lot of those things are also deeply personally vetted. So your CEO or COO, CFO, a lot of those people are the ones who are by their own hand doing the business here. They're going and meeting these people. They're going to get the sense of comfort and confidence. So much so that they're going to ask you to break your security, break your protocol in order to make this business partnership work. And because they've built that trust there. And so this is, again, kind of highlighting, a merger and acquisition or a joint venture or a key integration partner. Those are extremely sensitive and very, highly visible security moments that you need to, as a CISO, as a director, as a security professional, you need to say, we need to make sure we do this right. Now, what more could they have done right in this situation? I don't know. But hey, yeah, we're gonna integrate with the repo. We want to check that out first. We want to go and review that code. We're gonna throw AI at it and see what it tells us. Have it look for malicious code. Um, we're going to take their application that they've built and we're going to run it in our malware sandbox and see all what it does before we just load it into our environment, right? We're going to take the time to evaluate this and just make sure that we can establish this trust and that we can establish the validity of what's going on here. Um, and do you do that with all your third parties, your HVAC vendors and everybody else, right? It could be any of these firms, right? Could be in those situations, and North Korea could be in the seats of those people. So this is not an easy to handle situation. It requires awareness to start. It requires awareness and it requires understanding that you might be a target. As long as you have something of value, you are a target. And if you've got a lot of money to send someplace, you are definitely a target for North Korea. But North Korea is not the only people who are infiltrating companies, are trying to fool them into, you know, entertaining partnerships or doing some business deal or signing a contract or anything. They're not the only ones. Iran is certainly doing it. The Mossad is doing it. The CIA is doing it. Britain's doing it. All the NATO states are doing it. Russia's doing it. Everybody's doing it. This is standard spycraft, frankly. A lot of this reads to me like standard spycraft in that you foster relationships with key assets in the area where you want to go and operate, and you let them operate and do the thing. You don't send your people necessarily to go and do all those things. You get mules, you get people to do it on your behalf. You find people who are amenable to your philosophy, your situation, the way your politics, or your cause, and that's usually your road into that. So again, this is espionage. This is nothing new from that perspective. I think it's just new in that we've not seen North Korea take this much time. But when you take a look at what this netted them, 285 divided by 6, it ended up netting them $47 million per month that they spent there. And they only had to spend $1 million. So for the $1 million they put in, they got 285 times that back. That's an amazing return on investment. So hey, hats off to the attacker in that situation. Or you gotta give the credit where it is due. These people are very tricky and they're not easy to detect, and they are bold. And fortune favors the bold in many times, in many cases. Some of the best social engineering is just simply done because people have low inhibitions. Where everybody else in the social contract would be like, "Oh, I can't do that. What will people think?" And they just go like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go do that. What are they gonna think?" And they just go do it. They just have the confidence to go and be the person that they say they are, even though they're not. So that's that. But and I think I'll leave you all with one more small short news article, which was speaking of partnerships. Microsoft recently has kind of wreaked havoc on their developer partner network. So VeraCrypt, WireGuard, and Windscribe apparently all had their accounts shut down by Microsoft. And WireGuard, who also makes the Molvad VPN software, um, they couldn't roll out software updates that they were trying to roll out for. And this Windows hardware ecosystem is meant for, if you want to release something on Windows hardware, you have to be a part of this developer ecosystem. Well, apparently Microsoft back in 2024 started a process where they were going to want to actually validate the the identity of the different developers they have in this program, which means you need to have passport or identification, kind of like going for your driver's license, right? Or your passport. You have to provide all this data to them. And so that they can verify and validate who you are. And okay, that sounds great. Well, these developers didn't get the memo apparently. I mean, they really didn't. And the WireGuard developer actually was going through his email frantically, going like, "Where was this? Where was this notification saying, hey, if you don't give us your passport, if you don't give us your information, in the next 2 years, we're going to delete your accounts." And where's the follow up, and where's the nagging and everything. And they're like, this is the email I use for this account. They've not sent me anything, they've not mailed me anything, not sent me anything that would tell me about this. This is unacceptable. And so, you know Microsoft is huge, and it's hard to partner with Microsoft simply because they are too huge to really care about your minuscule impact on their world. And so they also really can't afford, even though they've got money probably to do it, they can't afford, apparently, to have people to look at these issues. And because they're like, I don't know who to go talk to. There's no one to go talk to. It's getting lost there. No one knows who to go and figure that out. Um, but yeah, so it had apparently had started in 2020 October. We've been sending everyone emails since October 2025. The company began requiring mandatory account verification for all partners in the Windows hardware program. It covers everything from software drivers and more. Last month, the company updated the post to say accounts that did not successfully complete account verification and received a rejected verification status had been suspended from the Windows hardware program. Submissions from these accounts were no longer permitted. So it's possible the policy led to a account crackdown. However, Donenfeld, who's the WireGuard person, said his account had already gone through the verification process, but he still received a suspension. Actually, no, Donenfeld. I'm sorry, Donenfeld would be for one of the other. No, that was WireGuard. Yeah, Jason Donenfeld. And he said, actually already went through the verification process, but I still received a suspension. The odd situation seems to situation threatens to hurt Microsoft's reputation, while sparking debate over whether tech giants have too much control over their software ecosystems. Um, and so bureaucracy, of course, is an issue. He's like, I'm in contact with the people there. It seems like they're on top of this snafu. They're fixing it systematically. One of the situations of bureaucracy getting out of hand, and so they're figuring it out. Um, on X, Hanselman countered that sometimes it's just a matter of checking emails and verifying accounts. Not every WTF Microsoft moment is a slam dunk. I've emailed Veracrypt personally and will get him unblocked. I've already talked to Jason at WireGuard. Not everything is a conspiracy. Sometimes it's literally paperwork. So again, it's one of those things where we think we have a great process, a great way to establish some security, but there's still going to be a problem. Someone is still going to be hurt in this. Um, and maybe instead of revoking them or whatever, maybe there is another way to get a scream test going without fully blocking them from what they need to do. But I'm sure there's some lessons learned there. But if these are the only three projects that had this happen to them, it's probably not too big on Microsoft's radar. And that's just the reality of it. And you need to think about that when you partner with security or other technology firms. Are you such a small fish in the ocean that their support really isn't going to be supportive of you? At the same time, do you really want to be the single largest customer of your partner where they don't have enough scale to actually truly support you? So, where's your happy medium in a partner that is going to be able to help you there? Unfortunately, if you want to actually develop for Microsoft systems and everything, you have to be part of that program. So it's kind of a monopoly in that way. Um, yeah, but anyway, I found that interesting. But that's again kind of a interesting supply chain denial of service. Self-inflicting injury there for Microsoft, where an entire supply chain is cut off. What if there's a zero day? What if there's something that is, was done, and now this person needs to get in and can't fix it because Microsoft blocked them? That could be ruinous. It could be awful, and potentially destroy that developer's chain of trust with their customers or their user base. Um, this has been fun. I just wanted to cover a few different news articles and little things and kind of give you a little bit of a weekly, uh, kind of a weekly wrap up. Saw a few people pop in. No one gave some comments, but we'll see what it is. I don't know if I'm going to do these weekly. So just stay tuned. I am at infosec.exchange. You'll also see me at Oddjob on Blue Skies, and I will definitely let you know when I'm streaming next. I will also be sure to schedule the streams. So if I'm feeling like I'm going to stream that week, probably Wednesday or Thursday, I'm going to schedule a stream on a Friday. And I'll try to do it a little earlier. I actually wanted to do this earlier at about 7. I wanted to do this originally, and I just didn't get the last bits of some of my little research and other little setups done. Um, so hopefully everything's good now. But we'll see what happens. Maybe next week or the week after, I'll have another glass of OJ stream for you to enjoy. There'll probably be some plenty of interesting news segments that have come in, and we can talk about those. And I'll try to give you my thoughts and takeaways on them. And if you didn't catch me here and you don't want to watch an hour and 15 minutes of me talking, there's probably going to be some YouTube shorts of this as well, all chopped up. So you'll probably see plenty of those throughout the next couple weeks. But thanks for being on with me. And if I'm seeing you later, good to see you now. And I will see you in the next one, whenever that is.